and welcome to this month's edition of Worcester Public Library's Coming Soon titles. I'm Taylor, and I'm here with my colleague,
Joy.
As usual, I will be presenting the fiction titles, and Joy will do the nonfiction. All of these will be available in print, and hopefully, eventually, in ebook or audiobook format. And with that, let's get started.
All right, I'll go first this time. My first choice for this month is The Abyss, Nuclear Crisis, Cuba, 1962 by Max Hastings. Many of you are probably unaware of just how close the world came to nuclear annihilation in October of 1962, 60 years ago, when the United States and the Soviet Union faced off over Russia's decision to plant nuclear missiles on the island of Cuba, 90 miles from the U.S. mainland. Russian leader Nikita Khrushchev had been assured by some of his advisors that the U.S. wouldn't notice. They were wrong. American military and intelligence services did indeed notice, and America's young and charismatic president, John F. Kennedy, still smarting from a humiliating defeat at the Bay of Pigs the year before, wasn't having it. Backed by his own advisors, Kennedy told Khrushchev, get those missiles out of Cuba or suffer the consequences. Since both the United States and the Soviet Union possessed nuclear arsenals big enough to pulverize the world many times over, even 8-year-old kids like me, yes, alert listener, I was 8 years old in 1962, figure it out, understood that those consequences could be dire indeed. So what happened? Spoiler alert, 60 years on, we're alive, and we have not yet had to navigate over a blasted apocalyptic landscape. Operative word, yet. Yes, Moscow blinked. Kennedy compromised, albeit secretly, and a crisis of unprecedented proportions was averted. Both sides were sobered and shaken by what all agreed was a close call, and it could be said that the Cuban Missile Crisis motivated both countries to engage, at least eventually, in nuclear non-proliferation treaties. Well, if you want to know more, you can search Wikipedia, or instead read The Abyss, Nuclear Crisis, Cuba, 1962, award-winning historian Max Hastings' people-focused, day-by-day account of events as they unfolded. In a starred review, PW calls The Abyss riveting history. LJ praises the author's extensive archival research and calls the work eminently readable. Booklist calls it an able account replete with astute characterizations of participants in the crisis.
A heavy one to start with. We're starting big.
Yeah, we are. You don't remember it, but do you remember people talking about it?
I remember learning about it.
I was 8 years old, and people really believed this might be the end. I mean, it was really, really serious.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I'm going to start off the fiction one with a much less serious. For my first choice, we have Blackmail and Bibinga by Mia P. Manasala. Okay, now I know it's only October, and we're just getting into the fall season, but why not prep ourselves with a little Christmas? I can hear you now, but Taylor, it's spooky season, so I'll bargain with you. A Christmas murder mystery. In Shady Palms, we have Lila Macapagal enjoying the fruits of her labors in the Bruja Cafe. What a success in its first year, she actually made a profit. On top of her successful business is her wonderful, thriving relationship with her once friend, now lover. She's enjoying life until her almost long-lost cousin Ronnie returns to Shady Palms. Excited to have him back, her Tita Rosie considers Ronnie her prodigal son. He's purchased a local winery, ready to settle down and give back to the community. But Lila isn't easily as won over as her other family members are. The suspicion grows as the family receives a threatening letter implying that Ronnie has committed murder in Key West. After a visit to her cousin's winery and meeting his business partners and investors, Lila finds herself feeling slightly assuaged. Until you guessed it, one of the investors has been poisoned. Ronnie claims he's innocent. Why would he try to kill one of his biggest investors? The secrets and lies are piling up, and it seems that Lila has to be the one to unravel it all. Working through years of resentment and distrust, she resolves to prove her cousin's innocence. Blood is thicker than wine. I mean, water, after all. Plus, there's no way her own family member could actually be a murderer, right? The mystery, though, upstaged by a parade of food and drink so exquisite that most readers, even before peeking at the 4 recipes that are the real climax of the drama, would happily share in the investor's last libation, even if it meant risking her fate. Kirkus calls this the hands-down tastiest whodunit you'll consume all year.
Oh, no, don't even tell me that. I'm so hungry.
Sorry.
I'll remember not to read it when I'm hungry.
Yes.
Okay. My next choice for this month is The Song of the Cell, an exploration of medicine and the new human by Pulitzer Prize-winning writer Siddhartha Mukherjee. It all began when English scientist Robert Hooke and an eccentric Dutch cloth merchant, Antony Leeuwenhoek, peered into their homemade microscopes. What they saw led to the revolutionary discovery that every component of every complex living organism is composed of assemblages of tiny, self-contained, self-regulating units that Hooke christened cells. Now in his new work, Following Emperor of Maladies and the Gene, renowned scientist Siddhartha Mukherjee wields his rare gift for rendering dense medical scientific concepts accessible to explore how our evolving understanding of the cellular foundation of the human body has led to an ability to manipulate cells to treat and ultimately heal a host of medical conditions. Mukherjee laces his scholarly narrative with exhilarating anecdotes of individuals whose lives have been transformed, even saved, through the implementation of cellular therapies. He avers that we have just begun to exploit the possibilities that these new technologies afford. And ever hopeful, he maintains that in this area of human endeavor at least, the future is promising. In its starred review, Kirkus calls The Song of the Cell another outstanding addition to the author's body of work and a luminous journey into cellular biology. Booklist says it is nothing less than an ode to the cell, infused with a sense of wonder and humanity.
I will say, this is one I already knew about, and I am very excited for because I bought it for my collection.
Well, really, great.
I don't read as much nonfiction as I used to, but whenever I did, it was almost always kind of like a science medical kind of one.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff out there, and I'm looking forward to this also.
All right, so for my next choice, we have When We Were Sisters by Fatima Asghar. Asghar follows her poetry collection with an elegant debut novel, which follows 3 Pakistani-American sisters scrabbling to get by after their father dies. 9-year-old Noreen, the oldest and de facto caretaker, Aisha, the quarrelsome middle child, and Kausar, the sensitive youngest and our narrator. Their mother died years ago. When their beloved father is murdered, the young sisters are orphaned. Their parents were immigrants from Pakistan, so they are familyless in America, except for one uncle that they do not know. He promises them a new home with plenty of room and even a zoo. After a 5-hour car ride, the girls end up in a less than hospitable apartment, and as for the zoo, it's just a hallway full of neglected caged birds.
Oh.
It soon becomes apparent that he has taken custody only to cash the checks that the government pays him to care for the sisters. He rules the sisters' lives with authoritarian neglect, demanding they follow strict rules of behavior, and isolates them from everything but school. The girls find themselves alone most of the time, unless one of the other bedrooms in the apartment is being rented out by other immigrants in transit. Sometimes they get lucky and a kindly couple will move in, willing to parent them for a while. Their uncle is dealing with his own issues, a wife and 2 sons from whom he's separated from. While they live out in the suburb, he lives in his own apartment, separate from his nieces, where his hoarding is completely out of control. The neglect of his nieces does not come just at the price of not receiving any love or attention, but also food or money. Caught between American culture and their family's Pakistani background, with little to no support, the girls turn to each other. But as they grow up and become teenagers, cracks develop in their bonds of love. When We Were Sisters tenderly examines the bonds and fractures of sisterhood, names the perils of being 3 Muslim American girls alone against the world, and ultimately illustrates how those who've lost everything might still make homes in each other.
Huh.
So definitely a heavy, sad one.
Yeah.
But it does sound like there might be a little bit of light in it.
Yes, exactly. To a point. It seems
Yes.
very sad, but it sounds as if there might be some kind of satisfying ending involved in this.
Hopefully.
So, hopefully. Well, now for something completely different from anything I've done before. Muppets in Moscow, the unexpected crazy true story of making Sesame Street in Moscow by Natasha Lance Rogoff. I'm going to start by quoting from a review of Muppets in Moscow that originally appeared in Booklist. Quote, when the USSR dissolved in 1993, the whole world headed to Russia to make money. Rogoff's purpose was a bit more furry, end quote. Natasha Rogoff, an American independent filmmaker and fluent Russian speaker, was hired to produce a Russian version of an iconic American classic. You got it, Sesame Street. What followed was, as might be expected, a wild ride. Americans involved in the project hoped that Bert, Ernie, Elmo, Miss Piggy, and my own personal favorite by a long shot, Kermit the Frog, would serve as perfect ambassadors for Western democratic values in a time of radical social transformation. In the end, Rogoff and the multitude of set designers, writers, directors, singers, dancers, and others who worked with her were successful. The show, titled Ulica Sesame, premiered in 1996 and ran until 2010. However, the task of transplanting an American cultural institution into an entirely foreign context was daunting. Rogoff faced a host of challenges, from the resistance of the Russian crew member who, proud of his own country's rich puppeteering tradition, declared, "We don't need your American Muppets in our children's show," to intimidation by the military. The show nearly tanked several times before the first episode even aired. However, in the words of one reviewer, oligarchy was no match for Oscar the Grouch. The final product of all that painstaking work was not the Sesame Street clone that many American backers had envisioned. Ulica Sesame was a Russian show directed toward a Russian audience in a uniquely Russian milieu. Rogoff's team even created 3 new puppets designed to appeal to Russian sensibilities, who happily joined the cast members, so familiar to most Americans. PW, in a starred review, said that this tale is one of perseverance and creativity that illuminates how even the most disparate cultures can find common ground, and LJ, in its starred review, calls it a joy to read. What a contrast with the first title I reviewed, which is about near annihilation, fueled by political difference, and something like this, which is about creativity and collaboration and hope.
And bringing it all together. So for a show that almost didn't even have a first episode, it's pretty impressive that it made it to 2010.
A long time.
Yeah, much further than I thought you were going to say it made it to.
And I do want to point out that there are episodes and at least some of the songs available on YouTube, so try it out. I've got the theme song running through my head as we speak, and I'm not going to treat you to it.
Oh, okay. Next time.
Okay.
All right, so for my final fiction choice, I have A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. It's another retelling of a classic, but now if you're expecting some nuanced story following the original Dracula, you will be deeply disappointed. Leave all expectations at the door and sit back for a story of romance and betrayal. Constanza is our narrator, telling her story in part letter, part murder confession. Saved from the brink of death by a mysterious stranger, she's transformed from a medieval peasant into a bride fit for an undying king. Now her new husband is captivating but tyrannical, unnamed vampire who turned her and made her his bride before becoming her abuser. The letter chronicles their relationship from plague-ridden medieval Romania through a violent whirlwind tour of Europe to 1920s France. Throughout their travels, Constanza's husband masterfully manipulates her into twice agreeing to expand their family. The first manipulations involve turning and marrying Magdalena, a Spanish philosopher. The second being turning and marrying Alexei, a boisterous Russian actor. With 2 new spouses in the mix and marriage bed, Constanza finds herself not only in love with her husband, but with her 2 other consorts. And it is that love and passion between the 3 of them that allows her to break through her husband's grasp, finally able to see his impossible rules and jealous rage for what they really are, a means of control to his very own ends. With the lives of everyone she loves on the line, Constanza will have to choose between her own freedom and her love for her husband. However, the bonds forged by blood can only be broken by death. S.T. Gibson captures an in-depth portrait of emotional abuse that nails Constanza's complex intermingling of love, pain, fear, and anger in mesmerizing prose. Thorny, fast-paced, unabashedly queer, A Dowry of Blood is sure to draw readers in.
Well, I'm disappointed because I love the title, but there just seems to be too much love in it.
Yes, I would like to emphasize that this is definitely a romance novel. There's going to be a lot of love in it.
And you know, I love horror, so that would be disappointing to me.
Well, this one seems good for me, so I'll give it a read, and then if I think it'll pass the joy test, I'll send it your way.
Do that.
All right, well, thank you all for joining us. We look forward to new releases next month.
And see you later, fellow readers.
Goodbye.